humans, it's just Martine, and today we're going to be reading books that I think I'm going to unhaul immediately after reading them. Me unhauling a book immediately after reading it is not necessarily a sign that it's a bad book. I just don't have a reason to keep it. Oh, or I don't want to keep it. Sometimes it does signify that it's not a book that I really like, but you know, I'm just going into this saying, like, I don't think these look like terrible books. I just don't think I'm going to keep them after. I will walk you through where I got each of these because I think that's very telling for the spread that we have here. Basically, the way that I picked these are like books that were sitting on my shelf for a while that I looked at and I was like, I'm not sure I want to read you anymore. So I'm going to make myself read them. I'm making myself prioritize them when I'm not interested in them. 12 TBRs. So here are the 5 books. 2 of them are mass market paperback, thick boys. The first one, Dark Horse, I actually read like the first chapter of, the first like 18 pages. It was probably in like my sophomore year of college. And then I didn't keep reading it. And here we are now. The horse is in the title. So I don't know why I picked it up. It was free. That's why I picked it up. It was free and it looked more interesting than the other free books, and that's my toxic trait. I got this for free. I forget specifically at which free shelf, but my guess is that I got it for free at my last campus, and I haven't read it yet. And I don't particularly want to, but we're going to for this. Then I have Lord of the Firelands, which looks like it's a fantasy. It's a bit of a chunky mass market fantasy. Why did I ever pick this up? It was on a free shelf there. I think these were from the same free shelf on different days, okay? I have a weakness. Next, and I think this might be from the same free bookshelf. That free bookshelf always got me on my campus. It was at the All Faith Center. I have so many books from that shelf. Anyway, it's An Officer and a Spy by Robert Harris. It's a historical fiction. It's thicker than it seems. Like, it doesn't seem too bad, but it's over 400 pages. Why would I think I'd want to read this? The spy element, if you will, maybe got me. But I look at this now and I don't feel like, wow, I really want to read this right now. So that's the free bookshelf added again. This is from a different free bookshelf, but a free bookshelf nevertheless, and that's The Beekeeper's Ball. This is from the free little library in my neighborhood, I believe. I also think this is the book in this stack that I've had the longest. I think it's a romance, and I don't care. Like, I don't care. But I'm going to read it for this, apparently. And then lastly, there is one Dollar Tree book on this list. This was one of my earliest Dollar Tree finds, and that's Medusa's Web. I still see this sometimes in the Dollar Tree. Like, this is just still floating around for some reason. I don't know why I ever like lost interest in this. It's because I forgot what it's about, because I've had it for too long and I'm just like, I don't know. It also, since it's kind of like a thrillery type book, regardless of how much I like it, is just probably not going to stay with me after I read it. Get rid of most thrillers after I read them, because like, why would I hold on to them? And those are the 5 books I'm going to read for this. Let's get cracking. Okay, I went challenge mode with this and started with Dark Horse, which again, I'd read the first 18 pages of and then stopped. And I'm actually giving it 3 stars. For a moment, it was looking like it would be 3.5, but then some of the things at the end just fell a little flat, which is fine. It was still a fun time overall. In this, we're following this woman, Elena, and her life has recently been in shambles because of something that happened at her last job. She was in the police department and then something went horribly wrong with one of her cases, so she's not there anymore. And this little girl approaches her to ask if she will serve as a private investigator because her older sister has recently gone missing. I do think one thing that I found particularly fun about this book is that it's set in South Florida, and so they talked about a lot of things I know about as I live in South Florida. It doesn't look like it would be a book set in South Florida, but it is. And there was also a twist that I really enjoyed and didn't see coming. This was a pretty good time, but I am definitely going to unhaul it. Like, it was fun, but I don't feel the need to keep this in my collection. So, 1 book done. The last book I read for this was Lord of the Firelands, A Tale of the King's Blades, and I'm giving this 3 stars. I am going to unhaul it, but on the other hand, I also had a better time with it than I thought I was going to. Like, going into this video, I was dreading reading this book because I knew it would take me a while and I didn't think I would be interested. But overall, I had a pretty fun time with this. The main problem I had with it was the narrative structure. In this book, we're following these boys and they're training to be King's Blades, which are like these special fighters for the king. And they're called in and asked to take the oath, and one of them says that he will not serve the king, and so the other, who is his friend, just goes ahead and says, yeah, I won't serve the king either. And then we get to hear the story of why the first guy said that. Things kind of happen from there, and so it's largely like a look back at what happened previously in the life that led to this one guy saying he wouldn't serve the king, but then also we find out what happens after that story. And that's what I mean by the narrative structure was a bit weird, because we have like over 100 pages that are like a back then story, and then we move forward with like the current plot, which is weird. Overall, fun time, but it is leaving now, so bye-bye book. I think a lot of people, when they see my idea for this video and how it's starting, are going to be like, why would you ever do this video if you think you're going to unhaul the books, just get rid of them? But listen, this book is exactly why I feel like I have to read all the books, and that's because I read An Officer and a Spy by Robert Harris, and I gave it 4.5 stars. I'm not getting rid of this book. I love this book. In fact, I told my mother about it today, and I was like, I'm bringing it home for you to read because I think you'll like it, and I really liked it. So that's the shock of the century. A much more pleasant shock than, say, having 5-star predictions and hating the book. So this one is a historical fiction, and it has been fictionalized, but it is based off of a real life series of events that I had never heard of before. And maybe everybody else knows about it, but I had never heard of it. And that's the Dreyfus Affair in France. And apparently in that situation, there was this guy, I think he was a major in the French army. He was arrested for treason, basically, because he was caught passing off information to the Germans in the late 1800s, so prior to World War I. And we're following a main character who he didn't help in that investigation, but he like was around during it, and then he is given the position of the head of the statistical unit in the army, which is their intelligence unit, and he does some digging and he finds out that not everything is exactly what it seems in that case. And then we spend the rest of the book trying to figure out what actually happened, who's responsible, and we're learning all these deep dark secrets about the government and the people in it, and it was fascinating. And I read this in one day, which is insane because it's like a slow, over 400-page historical fiction, but I read it during my 24 and 72, where I was reading 12 TBR's books, and it was just so good that I read the whole thing in one day. It had my attention the whole time. I loved it. It was so good. I think the only reason it's not a 5-star is because there were moments that were a little too slow, but other than that, I just loved it. I found the characters fascinating. I found all the intrigue and the corruption fascinating. All the things I learned about how people went about intelligence in the time, all of that, great. The historical setting of Paris, incredible. I normally say I'm not a huge historical fiction person, but what I really mean by that is I don't really like how all historical fiction feels largely the same. And this still took place in Europe, which is very common in historical fiction. It also took place at the end of the 1800s, which isn't that far off from the time period of World War I and then World War II, which is really popular in the historical fiction genre. But there was something so different about this, and I loved it. I just loved it. Not only did I like it, I'm not unhauling it, because I could have liked the book and then been like, I don't have to hold on to this, but I do. I do have to hold on to this. I want other people to read it. I want to keep it forever. And I just picked this up off a free shelf somewhere at my last campus, and it was so good. And that's bad news for me, because if all of the books I had read for this were not to my taste, then I would have had evidence to give myself of why I should stop picking up free books and why I should just get rid of books that I haven't read, that I own, that I'm not as interested in anymore. But now I have counter evidence, so that's problematic in some ways. It just supports my philosophy that like every book deserves a chance, because like there's a chance that I could really love it. So looking at this book, I don't know why I picked it up in the first place. Like I guess because it said espionage on the back, and I was like, that might be interesting, and it was free, so that combination, killer combination. But looking at it, this is not a book I would pick up, but I'm so glad I did. Love this book. I will definitely be unhauling this book. I'm giving it a 2.5 stars, The Beekeeper's Ball by Susan Wiggs. It ends on kind of a cliffhanger, but I don't know if it's part of a series, and I don't intend to read it if it is, even though I think the cliffhanger was one of the most interesting parts about the book. In this, we're technically following 2 timelines. One is like present day, and we're following this woman who is taking over her family's land and turning it into basically like a cooking place, like like not a cooking school, but yes, a cooking school. Basically like a cooking school. I don't know how to describe it. Anyway, and then we're also following a plot line during World War II because the main character's grandfather grew up in, I think, Denmark during World War II and like worked against the Nazis. And so there's this journalist who comes to visit Bella Vista, where she lives, and interview her grandfather to basically write a book about his life and his story. So we get like flashbacks to that story too, which was more interesting than the main plot of the book because I didn't believe the romance in this book at all, and I didn't care about it or either of the characters that were part of it. Overall, it was just mid, and I was ready for it to be over. I also think that the skipping back and forth was not as well done as it could have been. Like, it didn't flow very well. So yeah, that was this book, and it's gonna leave now. Okay, even though this book had like nothing in common with the library at Mount Char, it gave me the same vibes as it, and I'm also rating this pretty low because I didn't love those vibes, so it's getting a 2.5. I think the magic system in this is just really, really complex because in this one we're following these members of a family, and like the mom of the family has recently died, so everybody's getting back together in her old house to basically, like, it's a stipulation of the will, you have to stay here for like a week. And now that I say that, I realize like I'm not sure the will was fully like discussed at the end. Like, why were they there for a week? What did they get out of it? I don't think that was ever actually established. Whatever. So we're following these characters, and that seems simple enough, except that they use these things called spiders, which is just like on a piece of paper, it like looks like a spider, I guess, but it gives them visions, and like it can connect the past and the present. So if you look at a spider one time and then later you look at that same spider, you connect the 2 points in time, you like switch places. And so if different people look at the spider at different times, they swap places. And so they're kind of going through the mystery of like what happened to the matriarch in this family, especially in Hollywood in the 20s. But like it was just really confusing because like I didn't get why it mattered. And because it played with time so much, like, okay, books that play with time can either be phenomenal or can lose me completely. And this one like lost me at points, I won't lie. Like, not as bad as some other time books that I've read recently, but the magic systems that play with time have to be very specific for me to get them and like them. And so this one I didn't really like that much. They were also trying to track this like bigger spider, like a spider that connected everything, and that one was referred to as the Medusa, hence why it's called Medusa's Web. But yeah, it was just confusing. So as I guessed, even though I've had this book for a very long time, glad that I finally read it, and then I can unhaul it from my shelves. And with that, I have finished this unhaul project, and I did unhaul all but one of the books. So in general, I knew what I wasn't gonna like or wasn't going to want to keep, more like, because a lot of these were just fine. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a big thumbs up and comment down below. What do you do with books you own but aren't interested in anymore? And subscribe for more reading, writing, and college lifestyle content. And until next time, bye humans, bye!